Hello, this is Brett. This is a really quick overview of our 5-step Balanced Scorecard workshop as told to us by Green Food Farms. So Green Food Farms is an organization that both grows their own and imports food from Mexico and the United States, processes it, and then distributes it across North America. This is their story. So Phase 1 is capturing the strategic priorities. So we sat down with what they call the C-suite, their executive committee, and converted the existing strategy into a prioritized strategy map. This map has their strategic objectives and their priorities for this year. Step 1. Step 2 is working with sort of a scorecard team, a cross-functional team of experts to identify the strategic performance indicators for each of those objectives. And sometimes we drill down a bit into each of the core departments. This allows us to begin building that overall corporate level scorecard. But at this point, there's no drill down. The next step is what we call the ontology. What we're going to do is assess the projects and processes fitness for executing the strategy. So what we do is we take the strategic objectives and list them on the left with their weightings, and across the top, their core processes. And then for each process, we score its impact. So, for example, if we take a look at marketing, the impact of marketing on our grow profitability, they give themselves an impact score of 4 out of 5. And so we just conditionally format this cell based on the strategy points at play. In this case, there's 20, so it's dark gray. Here, we've got 17 times 3, that's 51. That triggers over the 50 points mark, so it's black. And here we've got 2 times 6, or 12, so it's light gray. So what this gives us is, if I ran marketing, I could see my critical performance nodes. Obviously, I'm going to focus on things I do to develop our core competencies is the most important, followed up by mission critical foods, and then third is understanding customer needs. So this allows us to begin identifying where the drill down KPIs would be in marketing and where they need to focus on. So we're going to do this for the processes, and we actually take 2 steps. First is we take a look at the impact, and then we add on its actual performance score. Again, we score it out of 5, and we end up with a colored ontology, which looks like this. So again, for each department, we have both the impact and the performance score. And the color is based on the strategy points at risk. So if we take a look at 3 nodes, all 3 nodes have an impact of 5 and a performance of 4. But in this case, it's green. In this case, it's yellow. In this case, that same impact and performance is red. Why is that? Well, it's because of the weightings. At a weighting of 6%, a performance level of 4 is acceptable. At a weighting of 12, it sends up a caution. But when it's super critical to the success, in this case an 18, it turns red. In other words, the more important a process is on strategic success, the higher the performance level we need. And so what this allows us to do is to begin to take a look at our performance in a strategically prioritized format. What this allows us to do is not only make sure the organization's aligned and working on the right things, but we can actually add this up. If we think of these as just scores and I add them up by strategic objective, we can produce a chart like this. What this chart shows you is that the height of the bar represents the amount of process support we need, in this case for developing core competencies. The blue part represents how well we're currently performing, and the gold is a gap between current performance and what the strategy calls for. So obviously, as we think of our projects for the year, we want to focus on the areas with the biggest gold bars, right? We're not going to be worrying about many projects around live our values because it's a small gap or build long-term stable brand. So for now, because we're going to move on to the second part of looking at processes, is we can just ignore the blue part and focus on those gold part, those gaps. So those are the gold bars. Now, what we should be able to do is a second part of that phase is score the portfolio of projects you have for their impact against those objectives. And we're going to chart those as red dots. So you can see for the particular portfolio projects, they've got lots of projects for core competencies and not many for stable brand. Now, how do we do that? It's the same process. We take the strategic objectives on the left, but in this case, the portfolio projects you have in mind, and we score not only the resources required, but where those projects are going to have an impact, both intended and unintended consequences. And so based on this, again, we can chart those as these red dots. Now, the interesting thing is this. If I combine those two charts, the gold bars, which again are the gaps that we're trying to close, and the red dots are gap closing activities, we often see this. What this is in some cases we have a huge gap and not many projects. In other cases, we have more projects than we have gap. So that's the misalignment between the projects and processes. And so this strategic performance analysis allows us to not only identify what the drill down KPIs are, but also sort out where it is we need to realign our projects to be better in line with our strategic performance gaps. So that takes us through phase 3. Phase 4, what we're going to do is we're going to begin building those scorecard processes. So the scorecard team and maybe the leadership team, if they want, will figure out how it is we get the data into the system and get analysis ready to run our performance meetings on a monthly basis. We'll talk about how to run those meetings and organize your agendas for you. And then finally, talk about the cadence, how it is we have team, departmental, group meetings, regional, and so forth, and how that allows us to modify the strategy over time. And then finally, the 5th phase is to actually build it and launch it. So using Oracle, we can put the data in and populate that strategy map. We can actually use the strategy wheel, which we think is awesome. The way this works, just for fun, is I have my overall scorecard, and as I click on it, this is the drill downs all the way around. And if I click on any of these, it moves to the center, and I can see its children. So this allows us to be able to take a look at our strategy effectively, not only on a computer screen, but on a cell phone or mobile. So those mobile apps and cell phone apps are all built in, and we begin launching them on the 5th phase. So looking at what the teams do, the executive team, the C-suite, we need them on phase 1 to build the strategy map and weightings. They have a midpoint review to make sure we're in line. And then finally, we need them again at the end for if they want to participate in setting up the scorecard processes, but certainly the final report out and launch. We have a scorecard team, which is basically their direct reports and other process knowledgeable people. And we need them to do the KPI identification, do the ontology work, help us design the system and begin putting in data, and then launching the system. So that's the overall 5-phase process. Now, to put this balanced scorecard into context, if we take a look at what you're responsible for as an executive, there's more than just the balanced scorecard. You're also responsible for risk management, for process improvement, for rewards and compensation, financial planning, and so forth. The journey that we just talked about is building the strategy map and then using that to build your balanced scorecard. Now, later on, you can use that to build a cascade by region, by brand, and so forth. The same strategy map is going to inform us on how to do our strategic process analysis. That's that black and white spreadsheet we looked at, which in turn allows us to do the strategic project and process alignment exercise. So the workshop that we just described, the 5 phases, cover off these portions. And it's plug and play. Later on, if you want to go back and do the process improvement workshop, objectives and key results, cascade, and so forth, it's built on this foundation, whether you use us to do it or you do it with your own internal team. So there's a quick overview of the 5-phase balanced scorecard process for green food farms. Thanks for your time.